about you.
So you might have to say, okay, read your message or something because I can't. I'm blind.
I will. Okay. Welcome everyone to season 2 of ALUMS Chat. This is our second episode. My name is Tabish Habib, and I'm very happy to have Shazia Ali Khan with us here today. Just to give you guys a little bit of an intro, uh, Shazia Ali Khan graduated with an MBA from LUMS in 1998. She's a corporate executive turned creative. Shazia began her career as a brand manager at Unilever, but her passion for storytelling led her to pursue filmmaking after studying at the London Film Academy. Her debut feature film, Pinky Memsaab, which came out in 2018, was a breakthrough success, winning Best Film at the UK Asian Film Festival in 2019. The film also streamed worldwide on Netflix for 4 years and earned global critical acclaim. She has also produced and directed Talking Divas for ARY London, and created impactful documentaries highlighting social causes in Africa and South Asia, in collaboration with renowned organizations like the Citizens Foundation and School Aid. Shazia's work has taken her across the UK, South Africa, and the UAE, where she now runs her own production house. Based in Dubai, she continues to bring powerful stories to life and is currently working on setting up a small startup to showcase undiscovered Pakistani brands in the natural foods and health arena. Hi, Shazia. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm privileged and very, very happy to be here.
Likewise, likewise. Okay, Shazia, so before we get into, how your filmmaking journey started, tell us a little bit about your life at LUMS and how that journey started.
Um, I was reasonably good at studies all my life, and kids who do well academically are unfortunately burdened by a lot of expectations from their
Yeah.
parents, and and I guess they put a lot of pressure on themselves also because going through school. So I had a pretty well sort of thought out plan. I would, go to LUMS, do an MBA. उस वक्त bachelor's था, but it wasn't as diverse as it is now. And the plan was to graduate and then get a good job and earn some money. But I think you start living your life when you stop living it by other people's expectations, you and live it by your own. So, and that point can come at any point in your life, right? Even much later, some people are lucky enough to discover that early. But yeah, in answer to your question, LUMS was great. I think it was one of the best years of my life. I made some very good friends. That constant pressure that, there is a lot of academic demands. There's no time, there's too much to do. The professors are gods, they've done what I mean, it's the best of everything that's in this tiny little island. And you're from all over the place, right? Your class is people from different age groups and things like that. And then you live quite a sheltered life. And then you come to LUMS and your eyes open and you're put under immense pressure sometimes. And I think that really crafts you as a person. So, yeah, it was great while it lasted.
Fantastic, fantastic. And then after LUMS, you basically went into the corporate world. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I applied a few companies, and again, thanks to uh, our institution and its reputation, I got in, thankfully. I chose Unilever because it was a consumer goods. I thought that that would be a little bit more glamorous, more diverse in terms of my demands as a marketing executive. So that was the right choice. It was brilliant. And actually, that's where I was exposed to this wonderful world of cameras through the advertising campaigns that we worked on. And so, I mean, the corporate sector is very different in the way you approach creative storytelling or what you want to say visually, especially if you're the client. And as we've discussed before, I had quite a reputation at Unilever because uh, the agency thought I was too meddlesome because I would show up on the shoots and would want to know what's going on and how it's going on. So obviously they didn't like it. So yeah, so it was good exposure for me for the life that was yet to come. And then I was there for 3 years. I was brand manager in household care in the home and personal care department. Great mentors there also. I was lucky. I was fortunate. And then I got married, so we moved to the UK, to London, and unfortunately, the economy was not that great at the time. So even though I tried to look for a few jobs, but I was either kind of overqualified because the management trainee program was a train that had left the building. So it so happened that I had time, so in just to keep myself busy, I did a few short courses and stuff, and filmmaking was one of them because of my experiences at Lever. And I really, really liked it. So then I thought, okay, let me kind of take this more seriously. And Yusuf, of course, encouraged me, my husband. And that's it. I never looked back. That's how the switch happened.
Fantastic, fantastic. You mentioned that, even if they were trying to keep you offset and whatnot, you would just find yourself there, right? So that strikes me as you had like a very curious nature, right? Like you were very curious about how, and a lot of like successful Pakistani directors have gotten their start through advertising. So what was it like switching from the corporate world and advertising, getting all the knowledge you did from working on all of those different campaigns? And then coming to Pinky Memsaab, right, which was a passion project. How did all of that come about?
That's a very good question because a lot of people would argue that creative people are creative and corporate money-minded people is that, and never shall the two meet. But that's not really the case because the foundation, the discipline of worrying about the money, worrying about the production side of things, worrying about the branding of it, the your target audiences, who are you trying to tell the story to, and how is it going to sell? Is it even going to? All that discipline did come from the business background and
Mhm.
working in the corporate sector, right? So I was on the other side of the table. I was the client for the agencies while they were developing our advertising campaigns. But because I had exposure to the kind of demands that the corporate sector has on anything that is produced, whether it's a film or it's an advert or whatever, I had a good understanding of where they're coming from also, which I often think that if you're a pure sort of creative person, you don't have exposure to.
Mhm.
Remember that when I graduated, there were no film programs in Pakistan. I mean, an MBA was the closest that you could get to things like, to study marketing and advertising,
Yeah,
etc. I think NCA and maybe Indus did offer a bit of filmmaking, but nothing as concrete. And I was so
concrete. Yeah.
pleasantly surprised that LUMS now offers film courses in the social sciences department. That's great. So yeah, so you know, where आपको जहाँ पहुँचना होता है आप पहुँच जाते हैं based
बिल्कुल.
on kind of person you are, if you're a storyteller at heart, whatever. But वो किस तरह से जा पहुँचते हैं, what is your journey while you're doing that, only makes you multi-layered and richer, I feel, in terms of the experiences that you have. So again, for the students who are listening, don't worry about the path that you take. I'm a classic example of someone who was doing something completely different for many years. And then I ended up here. So it's just that whatever you do, just do it with all your heart and make sure that you're learning on the way. It's only going to make you stronger later.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I can sort of vouch for that with every single experience that I've had. I feel like all of it kind of helps me with filmmaking, with any challenges that come along the way. It's all part of a journey, and you learn different lessons along the way that get you to where you are. But obviously, with film, especially like, passion projects and whatnot, we all kind of, at least that's how I feel, there's like stories that you really, really want to tell, and you just feel like I don't know, you just can't stop thinking about those stories, right?
No,
And
no. It's
that's the feeling I got when I saw Pinky Memsaab, and I was talking to another friend of mine the other day who'd also seen it, and we both kind of said the same thing, that it just came across as a very honest story, And the protagonist, the lead performer, Haja, I think her name is, had a very, very memorable performance. I mean, we both saw it, what, a good 6, 7 years ago, but it was still very fresh in our minds. So tell us about that. How did you come up with this story? What led you to wanting to share it with the world? And yes, talk a little bit about that.
So Pinky Memsaab is an expat tale, right? It's set in Dubai. It's about expat Pakistanis living here. It focuses a lot on income disparity, social divides. People who live away from their families tend to make the people who help them at home their families because they're privy to everything that happens in their lives. So it was not a life alien to me. I've been an expat for most of my sort of married life, and we had the chance of living in different places, and so every story, especially your first one, whether you're a writer, maybe it's your first painting as an artist or a filmmaker, uh, is a regurgitation of your life experiences. It may not be, but I think it's more effective if it is. And what you say about the honesty, thank you for that compliment. It was a very honest effort. And not only for me, it was also the team that was involved with me who were honest to what they were trying to do. They didn't want a typical commercial Lollywood film coming out of Pakistan or Dubai for that matter. They all believed in the fact that art house cinema in Pakistan also needs to have a voice. So everybody from the production design people to my assistant directors to the DOP, of course, even the producers who trusted in this project financially, they believed in the fact that alternative storytelling needs to happen in Pakistan. It has been happening, but more so. So it was literally my life experiences. A lot of people asked me at the time that this your life story? Is this close to what happened to you? The answer to that is yes and no, because I did borrow heavily from what I've experienced in my life, and not only myself, but the people who are close to me, who I've observed. And if that story is based on such life experiences, I think it will find its way. I mean, it didn't have major drama. There was no earth-shattering affairs and silly sort of item dancing happening, and the usual Dubai picturization, the yachts and the clubs and Burj Al Khalifa. It had none of that. But it was a simple story, and it lent itself to a lot of criticism because of that also. A lot of, even in the London premiere, I remember, where I thought the audiences are more exposed to stuff like this. They asked me, but why didn't you have a reconciliation between the two? There should have been at least one scene where the two women should have met and made up. We were looking forward to that. And I didn't know what to say to that because, for those who haven't seen it, but I'll just give it away. What did they expect the protagonist to do? Say, okay, I forgive you, and let me come and work for you again as a maid, you know? So that's not real life.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
not the point of the story. The point of the story is people move on. They move on with life, and they're not the people that you were searching for, you wanted to appease yourself with. So yeah, so it's a lot of what I feel. There was a very side way of saying it, but there was the minority issue too in that film, which is again very close to my heart for Pakistan. I think we're being completely unfair on the beautiful Pakistani people who are not Muslims, and somehow we think that just because Jinnah asked for partition on the basis of the fact that the Muslims will have a homeland to live in, doesn't mean that those who do not follow that religion are not as rooted to this land as we are. And I really and strongly feel about that. And of course my hands were tied. Of course I couldn't do it too overtly, but there were glimpses of that too. And that's why I do what I do. I think that's what why you do what you do, right? That
Yeah.
otherwise we'll just sit in our drawing rooms and have coffee and discuss it till doomsday. But how is that going to affect anybody? That's the
No,
privilege
you're
of our
absolutely right.
profession.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think one of the things that I tell my students is it's whenever you're coming up with a film idea, whatever it might be, what are you really trying to say, right? And I think that's what the difference is maybe between cinema and let's say commercial films, right? Where if you're trying to appease a certain audience and trying to sell a product and whatnot, and there is a place for that in a film industry. But with
Yes.
cinema, you
Oh,
are speaking truth to power, you are kind of questioning a lot of dynamics that exist within society that maybe could be problematic, that maybe need some kind of change. And I think our country is a classic example where these sort of questions always need to be asked, right? Uh, whether
but
it
I'm
is.
sorry to interrupt you, but that's a very interesting point because when I made Pinky Memes, I was all high and mighty, saying
Yeah,
things like that, what I've just said, but
yeah,
thinking a little less of commercial cinema. But I've learned my lesson in these last 4 years. I think
yeah,
commercial cinema, the way it is also very important for our audience.
absolutely. Yeah.
Look at what's happening in reality in our lives everywhere, like
Yeah.
everywhere in the world. Commercial cinema is escapism, which
Hmm.
is so important for somebody who's living like this life of drudgery. They want to see some beautiful people wear beautiful clothes and a nice love story, a nice rom-com. What
Yeah,
what's what's the problem with that? Like maybe they want to see
absolutely.
their favorite stars in a
Absolutely.
story that they know will end in like a fairy tale. That too is important. That too is an objective of making films. I
Yeah.
admit that. But then is that you or is that me? Maybe the person who's making those funny films is doing the world more service than I am,
Yeah.
making pointing in the direction where everybody knows, oh yeah, we know, but what can we do about it, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think I don't want to shoot that part of cinema. जहाँ मुझे तकलीफ होती है वो ये होती है कि yes, so that's the purpose of commercial cinema, but then at
Hmm.
least it should have integrity. Even the commercial cinema should have a truth to it. I feel
Yeah.
the Indians have nailed it. You know,
Hmm.
you have films like Kapoor and Sons, for example, or
Hmm.
Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara, or
Hmm.
stuff like that, where there is a gripping story. It's got
Yeah.
all the song and dance, it's got all those funny moments, the glam moments, but at the end of the day, at the heart of it, there's a intriguing story. You want to
Yeah.
follow the journey of the main character,
Yeah.
which I think some films are just there for those big frames and those beautiful, drone shots. मुझे ये भी किसी ने कहा था कि ये आपने कैसी सिनेमा फिल्म बना दी है, इसमें तो कोई ड्रोन शॉट्स ही नहीं है. You know,
Mm-hmm.
what about all those aerial shots? Although the
Yeah.
opening and the ending is aerial, because
Yeah.
frankly speaking, we could only afford it for 2 days in that
Yeah.
entire shoot. So I
Yeah.
chose the big opening shot and the ending shot to be that, that Dubai
Skyline.
whatever
Yeah.
highline.
Yeah.
But it's not important. I mean, one of my favorite films is A Separation,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah.
that entire film is shot on a mid shot. There,
Yeah.
there, there is
Majority
no
of it is
long
on a mid
shot
shot.
and
Yeah.
hardly any close-ups. Everything is like
Mm.
this.
Yeah.
So, but the story, the performances is so intriguing that you don't even care. So the
Yeah.
difference between craft, which is also important, the craft of filmmaking versus the storytelling.
Hmm.
Storytelling always has to take the lead. You have
Yeah.
to be very truthful about that, otherwise honest about that. Otherwise, no matter how good your craft is, no one is going to attach themselves to it. That's my humble opinion.
I couldn't agree more. I absolutely agree. I think one of the main issues with our industry is you just don't have enough films. I would like to live in a Pakistan film industry where you have all kinds of films being made, right? You have a Joyland and you have a Legend of Mola Jat, right? You have a Pinky Memsaab and you have a Javani Phir Nahi. We need more of different kinds of films. That's what makes the film industry. You're speaking about India and how they've nailed it. It's because they've had so many films coming out for so many years,
Yeah.
irrespective of whether certain films and certain themes that are discussed in those films rub certain political parties the wrong way, those films still manage to find an audience, still manage to make it to cinemas, right? And I think the banning culture, it's hard to talk about a film in Pakistan without talking about that. I think that just, I call it own goal behavior, right? You're constantly scoring own goals to just take your industry back. So
Yeah.
until we get to a point where we go from, I don't know, we spoke about this the other day, right? How many films come out a year in Pakistan, right? When we go from single digits to maybe, I don't know, closer to the 100 mark, then we can actually start understanding what it is that makes our film industry thrive. Yes, it's not to say that we shouldn't have commercial films coming out. We need those for the industry to survive, but we need all kinds of films. And that's in
Absolutely.
turn what's going to
Absolutely.
make our industry grow. Okay, but coming back to, the actual making of the film, I think one thing that, having gone through several film productions myself, one thing that's really, really important is casting, right? And I think that's one of the very, very strong suits of Pinky Memsaab. So can you talk a little bit about that whole process?
Yes, so obviously they weren't very big stars. I mean, they had their standing. Kiran Malik is a very well-known model here in the UAE, and
Yeah.
Haja, of course, is a great theater actress. With
Mhm.
at the time, with not too many, television sort of projects under her belt at the time. Now she has, of course. So it was. I mean, I just saw Pinky and Haja, and I saw Kiran, and I knew it was Meher. It was the way they were acting. I mean, Kiran, because she lives in Dubai, she moves around in these circles. She knew exactly the kind of diva that she needed to play, but then not just the diva, but also what's happening underneath that diva, right? She's
Yeah.
obviously someone who's not content with life. That's a very difficult role to play because
Mhm.
it's multi-layered. With Hajra, as we've discussed before, she's lives in Karachi. She's a total sort of city person. Doesn't even know Punjabi that well. So for she was anxious about the fact of how she would portray herself to be this young girl from literally fresh off the boat from the village. And the men, Nan Jafar, of course. I mean, I looked at him and I knew he could fit in the investment banker, cigar smoking, whiskey jugging Pakistanis that abound Dubai. And Sunny Hinduja, my God, what a treat to work with him. And he's become so big since then,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is so ironic. Again, you see, they all started around the same sort of line, but because India has so much to offer in
Yeah.
terms of the roles that he was offered, he now has his own show on a major OTT platform, and he's working with the likes of Manoj Bajpayee and several films to his credit. I mean, I'm very happy for him. He's a great actor. What
Mhm.
amazing work ethics. What a positive energy that he brought to the set, etc. I'm so happy for him. But it's a shame because in our country also there's so much talent, and
Mhm.
then obviously they
Absolutely.
were all
Absolutely.
rooted by those sort of the icons, Khalid
Mhm.
Ahmed Saab and Shamim Hilali. I mean, they were like they would come exactly on time on set.
Wow.
Absolutely no qualms about,
That's like
oh,
unheard of
uh,
in Pakistan.
yeah, he would quietly open his book and he
Yeah.
would read till his shot was ready. What
Mhm.
discipline, I say, what work ethics. And these are sort of senior citizens, right, at the time. They could
Mhm.
have been like, oh, but it's been a 12-hour shoot and where's our resting place and we want none of that.
Mhm.
So involved in that whole process of filmmaking. So I mean, I was really lucky. And I think I never ever casted anybody just because he or she was like a ticket item, a big ticket item for to draw the audiences in.
Mhm.
And we can talk about the financials later of this kind of filmmaking, but
Yeah.
of course it's much easier to draw in the audiences when one of the actors at least is well known.
Hmm.
So there's a reason why people cast big names, and
Yeah.
those big names are big names for a reason. They're either very good actors, or they're very good looking, or people just love them.
Hmm.
So there is definite merit as a producer. You would know that to cast people who are already quite well known, but we didn't go down that route, at least not for Pinky Memsaab. And I think all the characters were very believable because of that,
Yeah.
because they really, they took on that character and they became that character, and that's to their credit.
Fantastic, fantastic. When we spoke earlier, Shazia, you spoke a little bit about, because you teach yourself, a little bit about mental health with film, and it's a long, arduous task, right? It's you go through so many different phases from pre-production to production to post-production. It's such a difficult thing, right? Because you have so many departments, and I don't know, like all of them could be doing a good job, but one department could slip and it just affects the whole film, right? So it's a lot of pressure. You also spoke about financials, all of these different things together. And I think what really separates the people that actually go on to become filmmakers versus the ones that don't are the ones who can actually take it through to the finish line, right? From start to end. So talk a little bit about that because I'm sure there was numerous ups and downs, but when you got to the end and then, for the film to win in the UK and whatnot. It must have been really gratifying, but there were probably lots of ups and downs along the way. So talk a little bit about that and how you dealt with it.
Okay, so we were extremely bootstrapped,
Okay.
very, very bootstrapped, because it was a really for what we were trying to achieve, not a very big budget,
Hmm.
but that in itself puts a lot of financial pressure. So there were certain things where we didn't compromise.
Okay.
For example, the actors had to come from India and Pakistan. They were put up, there was transport, there was various other things, and we really looked after them. We looked after our crew. A lot of our crew was also imported from Pakistan and India. Actually, Pinky Memsa was a true collaboration between the two countries. You can't go to India to shoot, they can't come to Pakistan. Dubai is probably the best bridge between the two. But
Yeah.
with all that amazing stuff that happened as a collaboration, obviously there was a lot of pressure, and I mean financial pressure. This film was funded partially with my life savings, all that we had earned, and Yusuf, of course, was my partner in crime. And then there was a private investor who the rest of the gap was filled by him. He believed in the project, he believed in the team. He wanted to, it was an industry change for him. So he wanted to learn the ropes, be hands on, get his hands dirty, and see what the A to Z process of filmmaking is. So he took a chance on us. But from there onwards, everything was very tough. When there's a constant and I co-produced this film also. So as a creative, and then to worry about the money, you want a shot, but the car rig is going to cost you X amount of, and we're operating on Dubai costing, which is extremely high.
I
It
can
it
imagine.
was it was tough, and I think that is what really affects you mentally. It's a lot of pressure.
Hmm.
Uh, um, and then I was naive. I'm going to be talking about a few things today for aspiring filmmakers that I want them to sort of jot down. But the financials of filmmaking are horrendous, especially in
Hmm. Yeah.
Pakistan.
Yeah.
As we've discussed before, um, uh, uh, the exhibitors, the cinema exhibitors, pocket about 60% of your revenue. Then there's
Hmm.
a withholding tax, after
Yeah.
which, depending on what your relationship is with your distributor, 15 to 20% of the rest of the revenue gets cut.
Yeah.
After which, they bill you for things like X amount of posters, etc., etc. So it's
Yeah.
about 10 cents to the dollar. So if
Mhm.
on a 10 million, 1 crore rupee budget, for example, what do you have to do to even break even? You
Mhm.
do the math. It's what you need to do 10 crores to
Yeah.
recover 1 crore in
Yeah.
cinemas, right? I thought I would make a good product and I we would sell it and we
Mhm.
would recover our money and make some on top of that. But
Yeah.
that's now not how it works.
Yeah.
And so I now when I think about it, the amount of money that we allocated for the production of the film, at least half or if not the same amount needed to be allotted for marketing, for distribution, and the likes. And then we, as a team, thought that we will not get sponsorships, no product placements because it's an art house film. And if you don't do that, where is the money going to come from? So that's another lesson that we learned. Sponsorships don't hurt. Be creative in figuring out how your sponsors will also get their 5 seconds worth of advertising through your project. But when you, the first day your film goes into cinemas, you should have already broken even. That's how you go by it from the money side of things. We didn't do that. So even though, I mean, I'm very grateful. The title of the clickbait of this talk today is From Boardrooms to Blockbusters. Pinky Memsaab, I'm not ashamed to admit, was not a blockbuster. Maybe it was a blockbuster in the hearts of some people, certainly mine and my team's, but on in from a financial sense, it was not a blockbuster. And it wasn't really anybody's fault because you make a good product, but as business students, everyone should know that just having a good product on its own is not enough. You have to be able to figure out a way to market and sell it later also. And I'll tell you another thing. Yes, the exhibitors keep 60% of the revenues, but I don't blame them. I mean, look at the quality of films that are coming out of Pakistan, barring a few, right? So the
Yeah.
audiences, what the problem is, they don't want to go into the cinema and watch Pakistani films. So when the India-Pakistan thing hadn't happened, the political climate, there was a lot of Indian. When Pinky Memsaab came to theaters, we had Kedarnath, which was the first film, the premiere of the, what do you call it, the first film of Saif Ali Khan's daughter, Sara Ali Khan. So they
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
really pumping marketing money behind it. That was our competition. So the cinema exhibitors make their money through Indian cinema, if it's allowed in Pakistan, and Hollywood. Now, people go into the cinema to watch that, the DC and the Marvel movies and, etc., with a few exceptions. I'm not saying completely that. So, what power does the producer have? The producer will only have power when he has something in his hand that the people want to watch. I think
Mhm.
the only person who's defied everything is Mola Jat, the film
Mhm.
Mola Jat. I
Legend of
think
Maulana
the
Jack. Yeah.
guy knew what he was doing because
Mhm.
he gave that epic film that is worthy of cinema screens. The people loved it, and they
Mhm.
actually made a quite a packet on the box of it also.
Yeah.
But then he had the financial muscle to make an epic film because the budgets for epic films are
Through the
huge.
roof. Through the
People
roof.
like
Yeah.
you and I can't do it, not as
Yeah.
when they were starting out. And no
Yeah.
investor in his right mind, because the return on investment, 10 cents to a dollar, is so low. No
Yeah.
investor in his right mind would invest in our project. Yeah,
Mhm.
you will probably make a great film, and I will too in the future. But he knows that he has to make money. So
Yeah.
whose
Yeah.
fault is it,
Yeah.
right? It's nobody's fault. It's the fault of this, I guess, the way the system is. But
Yeah,
everything
I
is
don't
not
really, I don't
so.
really think it's the fault of anybody. I think that's, you're right. That's just the way the system is. It has changed a little bit, I will say, with streaming platforms. So for example, with Z5, right? What did Z5 do? They came to Pakistan, they found a bunch of directors who they thought would make good, hard-hitting content. There's a certain amount of curiosity for Indian viewers. There's loads and loads of South Asian viewers abroad, right? The diaspora. So it made a lot of sense for Z5 to invest in all these directors and go to them and be like, okay, you give us 8 episodes of whatever TV series you want, we'll fund that because it's a quarter of the price for them, right? That's the other thing that, kind of breaks my heart about production in Pakistan because, you had to deal with a very, very difficult hurdle of shooting in Dubai, right? But in Pakistan, production, even right now, even with inflation, is relatively inexpensive compared to any other part of the world,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And you
yeah,
couple that with the fact that our stories are so unique to viewers abroad, right?
yeah.
That there's, again, a curiosity for it. One of the very, very interesting kinds of feedback that I got when I screened my short, May I Have This Seat in the UK, was so it's basically the film takes place in a bus and there's all these different sawaris wo saath saath chal rahe hote hain. So one comment that I got from one viewer was, I've never seen people like this in my life. I've never seen faces like this in my life. And then,
Mm.
I was very curious about this. Like, what did you think Pakistanis looked like? She's like, I wasn't sure if they were Indian. I wasn't sure if they were Arab, right? And this conversation happened 4 years ago. So, I think with streaming platforms, it's changing a little bit. There's
No,
another
that
TV series
I
that's
was
going to
just
come out
talking
soon.
about theater because we
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
focused on theater, and then of course we were lucky enough to get onto Netflix. That was a game changer
Exactly.
even
Yeah,
for
yeah.
us.
That's how
But
I saw Pinky Memsaab. Yeah,
yeah, so I
yeah,
mean, if we had a reputation of good cinema, I think you would have probably gone and seen it in cinemas. But
yeah,
people are quite disheartened with the kind of, at least there is a certain segment of our society that's quite disheartened with the
yeah.
quality. And movies like Joyland, movies like Mola Jat, and others
I mean,
coming.
Joyland didn't even get to screen in the city where it was shot in, right?
That's a
So,
completely
yeah.
different story. I
Which
think
was
we can spend
a
2 hours.
big financial setback, yeah, as well.
Yeah,
But yeah,
but
so, yeah,
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 but yeah, the OTT platforms are again. But you know what? I'll be brave enough to say this was all 5 years ago.
yeah.
Even the OTT platform has come and gone. The
Hmm.
OTT
Yeah,
platforms
yeah,
is not what
absolutely.
it used to be. We are moving away, as we were discussing earlier,
Yeah,
with this what we call a vertical OTT platform, which is
yeah,
how,
yeah. Portrait.
people, this is how people see their films now. Literally,
Yeah,
it could be that it's their phone.
yeah,
And,
yeah,
these 30-second, 1 minute films. So it's interesting because my last project here in Dubai, I produced about 10 short films for
yeah,
vertical OTT platform.
yeah. Oh,
And
wow.
they were, it's all AI generated. So they
Oh,
give you
God.
a
Yeah,
clickbait,
yeah.
which is those bold things that they put on top, right? Shark
Hmm.
gets eaten by the man rather than man gets eaten by the.
Eaten by the shark.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
you have to think of a story that fits
based on
within
that.
the
Yeah,
30-second to 2 minute to whatever 5 minute, whatever format they want, and you build around it. And yeah, but and the best thing is, people are not even listening to it. They are reading it
yeah,
because in their trains and in their buses going home, and they're
yeah,
watching the visuals, and then they're watching the subtitles and they're reading it, and
yeah,
that's where the world is moving. So
yeah,
of course cinema will always be cinema, and it'll have its little, but that wonderful huge world of cinema, where everybody went to the theater, got dressed up and went, that
oh,
is
yeah,
slowly
that's,
diminishing and being replaced by vertical OTT, and of course, players like Netflix and stuff. I mean, even Netflix. I'm sorry, but there's a lot of. I mean, the content is, at sometimes you're speechless because you're like, how did these guys get funding?
yeah,
And
yeah.
they're on, you know, this
Oh,
thing. So it's just about volume. It's about who's clicking which button and what is AI telling you to do. Some guy is having a difficult time in his marriage, and
mm-hmm,
everybody's listening, right, to what
mm-hmm.
we're doing. And
Yeah,
suddenly you're going to start getting these films on marital advice and men cheating on their wives and beautiful women in bars. I mean, I think you can tell a lot about a
about where our
person
society's
by
headed
their
by
news, by
jobs.
their feeds that they have, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's quite telling, and that's content. That's the new future of content for those who brave it. There are purists sometimes like us who
Yeah.
want to stick to their guns, and there will always be room for that, right? Everybody
Yeah.
wants to sink their teeth in a good story. But the world is changing. And in a way, it's good, especially for the youngsters, right? Because there's access. You make
Yeah.
something good. And
Hmm.
in fact, I had written something down. There's something that's gone viral. I think it's some horror series, 30
Okay.
seconds. You heard about that?
What's
It's
it
on
called?
Z5, and it's 30-second episodes
Okay.
of horror stories, and it's become viral. I mean, it's being subtitled in Korean and
Okay.
Japanese
Wow.
and everything. It just goes to show that that's where the world is moving. And now the world is your oyster, because everyone and anyone who has internet access will get access to your what you make.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were speaking about this earlier as well, right? That like with at least my students that I teach, uh, half of them I would say are content creators who are very much looking to make, I don't know, 30-second TikToks or like reels on Instagram and are coming in with the sort of approach of how can I make that skill set better? How can I improve my storytelling for that reason? And on the other end, you have these students who don't use social media and are obsessed with Kurosawa. You mentioned Asghar Farhadi's The Separation. That's a film that comes up a lot. Irani filmmaking comes up a lot. So for me, it becomes kind of difficult to kind of keep both these two, different ends of the spectrum in mind as I'm sort of teaching them, right? But I think what I try and like logically when I break this down, I just think that they're all kind of competing with each other, and that's
Yeah.
the world we're living in now. So like
And
last
whether,
year,
I
was
mean,
it last year? Or was
they
it the year before with Barbenheimer, right? That was an insane campaign. And the only reason both those films had as many people go over to the theaters to watch it was because of the campaign around it. You could not escape the conversation around it. Everybody was speaking about it. My mother, who, is, late into her 60s now, her only association with Barbies is her daughters liking Barbies, right? But even because of that, she was Christopher Nolan, as they are auteurs, but they're very, very commercially successful. And yes, we are talking about Hollywood, but we're living in a very, very interesting time. I think that films and cinema, despite whatever challenges have come along the way, it's always managed to survive. There's like low periods and then there's high periods. And I just think that, the industry will find a way to keep
absolutely,
going.
absolutely. And it's like cyclical, right? So there will
Absolutely, yeah.
come a time when people will get sick of these short, brainless content that they see, and then there will be like a revolution back towards things where you can sink your teeth into the story, you see the mood of the film, you build characterization. It's all cyclical. It's just that, you know, we were talking about financial success. I think the critical point there is that you need to analyze what's going on around you and join the bandwagon with your sort of creative ethos intact, hopefully. And I mean, these films that I made, it wasn't like they were, I tried to put a little bit of what I believe in also, but it was just that it was very strictly dictated by the clickbait, and they even send you clips from movies. For example, that scene in Titanic where her fiance just takes the tablecloth away and smashes everything to ground, and they said, we want that energy, we want the same energy that this
Yeah,
scene has. So it's
yeah,
very closely dictated, but again, they have to make the money, right?
yeah,
Their technology has told them that this is what the people in a certain geography is going to click on. You
yeah.
have to follow the brief. And,
Absolutely, yeah.
and it's interesting what you mentioned about teaching both sides of the coin in your class. I do the same. But you
Yeah,
know what? It's very important that we do that,
yeah,
because it'll trickle down somehow
yeah,
in their
yeah,
work subconsciously. If you make them conscious of all those different sort of genres and way of filmmaking techniques and stuff, somewhere it's going to trickle down. That's the way the world works.
yeah. Absolutely, yeah. You can't sort of you can't pretend like these things don't exist, right? You have to be
Yeah.
mindful of both sides, and that's how, both sides can coexist. Shazia, tell us a little bit about future goals. Are you are you still working with film? Are you working on something else? Do you have, I mean, we've spoken a little bit about it, but do you have any advice for any aspiring filmmakers, maybe young female filmmakers from Pakistan?
Um, well, I can share with you some of my learnings from
Okay.
some of the mistakes. One I've already shared, which is obviously treat it like a project management exercise. You should
Yeah.
know how you're marketing and distributing. But other than that, there's this wonderful book called Big Magic, which is
Okay.
by this author called Elizabeth Gilbert. She wrote Eat, Love, and Pray. So it's
Okay.
not everybody's taste, but this one, Big Magic, is a kind of an autobiography of her
Okay.
life as a writer. And she said something which is very relevant to your question, which is that, you know, the day the 1 millionth copy sold of Eat, Love, Pray, my publisher called me. She's a waitress in a coffee shop and she works as a waitress. And she says, my publisher called me and said, Elizabeth, now quit your job. I think you can quit your job now. And she hasn't to this day. So, my advice is don't put financial pressure on your creativity.
Yeah.
Always
Great
have
advice.
something on the side. So,
Yeah.
and that kind of also wraps up your other question, which is that I am starting a small e-commerce business here in Dubai. Again, it's about brands that are in infancy in Pakistan, but I think the producers have done a really good job in bringing them to a certain point, and now the e-commerce website will open them to a new market. But again, it's storytelling.
Hmm.
It's stories of these brands which are literally fresh from the farms and from the mountains of Pakistan or wherever I source these products from, and they will be showcased as a story on the website, and then hopefully that would be of interest to people, the international crowds that live here, and it'll open up the market for them. So don't just think film, film, film. Think
Hmm.
those skills that you hone when you study film and you make films, you can channel it to a place where there is some commercial advantage to be taken. And then,
Yeah.
of course, your passion projects are on the side and very much there. I've written two scripts since Pinky Memsaab, and I'm
Fantastic.
sitting with them for the past 4 years. One of them is based totally in Pakistan. So the
Okay.
producers who I have found here are mostly Indian, and they
Hmm.
don't want to put money in a project where 100% of the principal shoot will be in a country where they're saying, who will be chased, we can't even go there. So
Yeah.
that's on the it now prop with thinking of adapting it for television, because as you know, our drama industry is flourishing despite everything else. So I
Hmm.
don't know if that'll work out. So that's one. And the second one is again a Dubai story. This time not a Pakistani Dubai story, but in five different people from completely different nations who
Fantastic.
live in Dubai. So I'm trying to get that made. But again, it's the financing that needs to be targeted for now. So while I do that, this is just, I've taken a break from the university and I am setting up this business, e-commerce, because it once it kind of gets going, then it'll be easier to manage both things. And that's my advice, work in advertising agencies, work in brand management, work in anything that is creative while you're working on your project, so that you at no point in your creative making process you feel that, oh, you feel so much pressure from the financial side that it kind of messes up what you're trying to achieve.
Fantastic, fantastic. Yeah, I think the moral of the story is just try and get as much experience as you can. And I'm really excited about these two scripts. Can't wait for them to actually go into production,
You're
hopefully
most
soon.
welcome to produce them. I can send them tomorrow to you.
We can have another call talking about that after this call. Okay, Shazia, I think we're going to wrap up here. I just had one last question. So we all get into filmmaking because we've seen a certain film that inspired us, right? Is there any films that you would recommend to anybody that they should watch if they're looking to be inspired, or a film that you saw that made you go, "Oh, I want to do this for a living"?
The one that made me go, oh, I want to do this for a living is Monsoon Wedding.
Monsoon Wedding,
Yeah.
fantastic. Meera Nair.
And it's an
Brilliant.
old film. I think most people won't relate to it, but what's beautiful about it is that it was so ethnic, right? It was so subcontinental, so
Mm.
relatable, but it was international cinema. It was
Yeah,
world cinema. It could
yeah.
it Every audiences across the world could relate to it.
Could
That
relate
was
to it now.
so beautiful. And actually Joyland is like that too. It's relatable for the whole world, but it's so firmly rooted in our society, right?
Yeah.
And then the other one is Parasite.
Oh, that's another one that's very relatable to
Yeah.
audiences all around the world, right?
I
Rich
mean,
family,
although it
poor family
happens
juxtaposition, anybody
halfway
can relate to
across the world, but it
that.
could be our own house, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, 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 yeah. Our houses could be flooded with water. Very relatable for us.
Well, I hope. But yeah, these are the two that I really like.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you so much, Shazia. That was a very,
Yes.
very enlightening conversation. I learned a lot about the film industry, about advertising, about making it through your MBA and through the corporate life. And yeah, I hope everybody else who tuned in enjoyed the conversation as well. And looking forward to our next episode. Thank you so much,
Thank
Shazia, for
you for
joining us
having me.
today.
Thank you so much. Take care.